Hey, Judy, thank you. And Michael, thank you. One of my teachers once told me that God doesn't care what you call it, just call it. Right? We're kind of like that with parents, right? We don't care what our children call us, Papa, Daddy, Dad, Father, hey you. As long as they call us, right? Yes? Okay. There's a parent out here I know somewhere. One of you is a parent, I know, and you have this experience. So we like it when our children call us. So that which we work with, that which we contemplate, and we're doing this today, is that which is beyond all the names, but includes all the names. And so we bring whatever name you want to give it, whatever name works for you. Each of us almost has a personal name for God in our hearts. Whether we call it the Tao, whether we call it Allah, whether we call it Ah, whether we call it Om, whether we call it whatever name we give it, we have a personal name for it. And just to be in touch with that. So this year we're working on a whole theme of creating a world that works for all. And part of creating a world that works for all is acknowledging how other people do things. All doesn't mean that they all do things my way, right? Dang it. I get so bummed about that. On the other hand, 7.5 billion of me on the planet. No, that would not be a pleasant thing. It's like when Agent Smith takes over in the Matrix, and there's only everybody is me. Okay. So we're working this month on the idea of the kinship of all life. That all of life is interconnected. All of us are one. And by life, I mean every form of life on the planet, as the planet, including the planet. So we're working on looking at that. And the topic today is place no limit on principle. So we have to start with principle. We have to start with the infinite. Because if we don't understand that there is a oneness to us all, no matter what names we give it, okay? No matter what we call life, that there's a oneness to it. If we start to separate ourselves from that, then we start to do stuff out of that sense of separation that doesn't work for all, right? So if I don't understand that you and I are one, I can start to do things to you because, well, you're just that over there. And you can start to do things to me because, well, he's just that over there. When we start to understand that we're all one, then we start to interact with each other. Cynthia and I actually like to watch the Big Bang Theory, a funny TV show. At the end of the Big Bang Theory is, as they're doing the closing credits, almost the very last credit is usually an essay by Chuck Lorre, who writes the show or produces the show. And I always just watch those cards. I used to just watch those cards go by and, that's, wonder what he says there. One day I decided to freeze it and see what he said there. And I did this with, I think it was just the very last episode. And he sits there and he goes, God wanted me to tell you that we're all one. And he did this whole essay on, no matter what you call me, no matter who you're looking at God. It's like God talking to us. You're looking at me. And I know you'll all finally wake up to this eventually, and but until you do, whatever you call yourselves, you're me. Whatever you're looking at me. And I'm sitting there going, this is on TV. This is a Science of Mind, New Thought, editorial on TV. It goes by like in 2 seconds or less, but you can freeze it and copy it off. And it's just like, there are more and more people awakening to this. The last thing God says is, that was a really good episode. Sheldon's such a great guy, isn't he? Sheldon Cooper, who's one of the stars. Anyways, our quote that we're working with today, our idea that we're working with is we believe in the healing power, in healing through the power of this mind, this capital M mind. We believe in healing through this power. Healing means bringing it back into alignment with the truth of what it's supposed to be. Okay? Healing means bringing it back into alignment with the highest and greatest good. Wherever we are experiencing a dis-ease, we are out of alignment with our highest good. We are out of alignment with the way that life really, really is. I'm not talking about life as we look at it here, but capital L, the infinite life, the life of love, the life of joy, the life of all good. Ernest Holmes tells us that there is nothing to be healed, only truth to be revealed. And we spend a lot of our times, don't we, doing a lot of healing stuff, which is to say fighting whatever that is, that disease is that we're out of sorts with. We've done, as this country, we've done wars on poverty, wars on drugs. Right now we're doing a war on terrorism. And how are those wars working out? Right? Not well. Not well at all. Because when we start to do battle with that which we don't like, we give it power. Instead of looking and saying, okay, so if I didn't have drugs, if I didn't have poverty, if I didn't have terrorism, what would I have? I would have this. Let's start moving towards that. Let's put our focus on that which I want. That which we know is the highest and greatest good for all. And so we start to put our attention on that. So the infinite power of Spirit is always on. Spirit doesn't take a holiday. Thank God. Thank God God doesn't take a holiday. If you're the infinite presence, where would you go for vacation? Everywhere. Yeah. And you're already there. So the infinite power of Spirit is always on, and we're always using it. This is the good news, bad news of this teaching. We're always using it. Whatever we are experiencing in our lives, we're using the infinite power to create in our lives. Ooh. I did say always. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's been messy for me too. So how are we using this power? What direction are we aiming this power? To what end are we taking this power and using it? Are we using it to create the lives we want, or do we use our minds for worry and fear and doubt and all that stuff? See, his flow is constant. It's like you have this control of a hose, and the hose is constantly flowing into your life. Where are you aiming it in your life? Are you aiming it in the direction you want it to go? Or are you aiming it in the direction you don't want it to go? And the hose, the flow is always full. The power of Spirit is always on full flow. It doesn't sit there and come down to a trickle for some people. I know some of us sometimes feel like we're kind of, hey, infinite presence, have you forgotten me out here in left field? No, it hasn't. You may have isolated yourself out there in left field and hate to admit that. I hate to admit that. You've done that, I've done that. We've probably all done that. Where are we directing it? We use our minds to direct it. We use our minds through our images, the images we hold of our lives. We use our mind through the words and the thoughts that we give to that. Because we define those images by our words and thoughts. If you're ever in class with me, you've noticed that I call people on their words, right? Yes. Okay. I have right now, there's a person in the Friday class that I was teaching on the follow-up from May McCarthy's workshop who has a tendency to use I will have my good. And I like to work with that person to say, no, if it's always I will have my good, your good is always out there somewhere a little bit out of reach in the future, rather than I am having my good right now, or I do have my good right now. Okay? And so we bring it in present to where this is the truth of me now in my consciousness. Now we're going to talk in a minute because your mind will sit there and go, yeah, but David, my good's not here right now. We'll talk about that in a minute, okay? Hold that thought. Better not, don't hold that thought. So we use our images, we use our words and thoughts, and we use our feelings to add power to those words, thoughts, and images. So if we use our word with just no power, it doesn't create a whole lot. If we use our word with, say, a lot of power of fear or guilt or anger, it creates really powerfully. If we use it with love and joy and excitement and conviction, it creates very powerfully too. So we use it with our feelings. So that's how we use this infinite power. If we're completely open to and aligned with Spirit, our good would just flow. We would just live lives that we're just totally in the flow. How many of you experience at least a portion somewhere in your life that you've been just like it's in the flow? Just things are just going boop, 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 like dominoes, and yeah. Okay? So we've all had that experience. That's how it's all supposed to be. But we have impediments, don't we? We have impediments like the belief that we're separate from our good, we're separate from our God. And so that core belief, that one core belief by itself, separates us from everything else, moves us out of alignment. If we heal that one belief, just that one belief, and recognize our oneness with Spirit, just getting that, it would completely shift everything else in your life. Everything else in your life. But when we're working with that idea that I'm in fear, I'm in separation, then I move into fear. Because my good's out there and I don't have it. And I don't know how to get it, and I might not get it, and it might not come in time, or it might come too much. Okay? And we start working in fear. Then when we have that fear, when we live with the fear for a while, we get angry. Things aren't working out my way, and dang it, I'm angry about that. Okay? We start to develop a distrust of Spirit, distrust of ourselves, distrust of the universe. And these old beliefs, which are not in alignment with our truth, are our impediments that run our life, that move us out of that. Now, the truth is, I'm working with the 4 Agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz right now. And the very first chapter in his book talks about how the domestication of the planet, the domestication of the race, how we are all hypnotized as children by our parents, our schools, our government, our siblings and friends. There's this mass hypnosis that takes place that tells us what life really is. Right? Okay? So we forget who we truly are. Most of us were not told life is this joyous process in which you will just move along and grow, and as you grow, you'll experience more and greater good, and it'll be so wonderful and so easy. You'll fall in love easily. You'll have plenty of friends. Things may go up and down, but it'll mostly be up, and you'll be fine. How many of you had that kind of an upbringing? Right. Not too many, okay? Most of us you have to work hard for what you want. Nothing's worth anything unless it's hard to get. I love that one. Okay? So stuff that's easy to come by is not worth anything, even if it is what I want. Okay. We should expect that after you've been on the planet for a number of years, your body will start doing this, and then if you've been on there for longer than that, your body will start doing this. And by the way, when cold season comes along, you'll get a cold. You better get a flu shot, because that's the only way to prevent yourself from getting the flu, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody heard sort of stuff like that? Okay, right. My favorite one when I was a kid was God loves everybody, and those who are not Catholic are going to hell. And if you dare as a little person to stand up and say, I disagree with that, that doesn't go real far, does it? No. Huh? Slap that down. Okay? So it's not that we're bad people or we were conditioned this way. We were trained to be like this. We were trained to be like this. The people you like and the people you don't like, you were mostly trained to like or don't like them by somebody else. Because if we're all one, who's to dislike? If you're me and I'm you, if that person sitting next to you and if that person is sitting directly opposite you is all God, now you may not like some of the things they're doing, but you can love that person as God, right? So that's the first thing. We get impediments in our mind, in our flow, in our working with the flow. The second thing that takes us out of that flow is we get energy leaks. This is where the energy starts dissipating into someplace other than where we want it to go. I'm heading this way, but wow, look at this over here. Squirrel, yes. For those who have seen that little show. Bright, shiny, Amy Steinberg has a wonderful song that goes, she's going along with that. And bright, shiny thing. New boy, new girl. So we get these things that distract us. We get greater faith in our failure than we do in our success. See, there's that wonderful question, what would you try in your life if you knew you could not fail? Okay? And most of us have a greater belief that we will fail than what we will succeed in what we're doing. That's an energy leak. We have beliefs such as we don't deserve it. Another one is we would lose something else that we want. I love this in relationships. If I have the relationship that I really want, I will lose the freedom from living by myself and being on my own and being able to do what I want. I'm fortunate I don't have that one. Cynthia's over there laughing. Okay? If I make a lot of money, it will take a lot of time, then I won't have any time to enjoy it. If I have lots of time to enjoy things, I probably am not making much money. And so I won't really be able to afford to have the time. Okay? And so we create these dichotomies. Not only do we have them as beliefs, but then they show up in our lives as because we believe them. That's how they show up, right? And so that's what we start to experience. And then it looks, and then we can say, "See, I told you so." And you're right. You told yourself so, and so because you told yourself it was so, it is now, and so it is. Okay? Take a breath. The universe is not an either-or place. The universe cannot not just do either this or that. The universe is a both-and. It can have freedom and the relationship. It can have money and time. It can have health and ease. How many of you think that health is a hard process? It involves sweaty gyms and eating foods you don't really want to eat and not eating the foods you really do want to eat. Yeah, I'm with you, huh? The third thing that gets in our way of using spirit is ignorance. And most of us who go to this church, this isn't necessarily our path, but we'll talk about it in a minute. Ignorance is, I don't even know the power exists. And probably 2/3 of the world, at least, works in that consciousness. I don't even know that there's an infinite power that I can use. See, a whole lot of people stick Jesus or some God up on a pedestal and worship, okay? But that's not the same as saying, how can I work with that infinite presence to create a life that works holistically on this planet? It's a different consciousness. Okay? It's a different consciousness. Now, I worship that infinite presence. It's phenomenal. When you sit and contemplate it, it'll blow your mind, it'll blow your heart, it'll blow your socks off, it'll blow your soul, it'll blow everything, right? If you start to really contemplate it and really sit with it. And that's what I call worshiping it. I spend the time with it just to go, oh my God, how wonderful. And then I say, and how can we work together to create something really wonderful? So ignorance, not knowing the power exists, not knowing how to use or apply it. So if you get a person who goes from, if we could time travel a person from 200 years ago and stick them into a dark room that has a perfectly functioning light switch and a perfectly functioning light in it, do you think that person from 200 years ago will go to the light switch and turn it on? No, because they have no concept of electricity and using it to turn on a light switch. They might go looking for a candle because that's their concept of how to get light. So many people do not know how to even turn on the power, how to even access the power, how to use it and apply it. And so out of this, we believe in our helplessness. We believe that we are helpless because we don't know how to use the power. The other thing that we sometimes, even those of us who do know how to use the power, is we believe we shouldn't use it for certain things. Or we don't go to it as our first go-to. It's okay, God, I know you're the infinite presence, but I'll handle this one. Do you know how that works? Not too well. Okay? If I lose my car keys, the first thing I do is go into prayer. I don't sit there and go, where did I leave them? And I got to solve this. I'll be with you in a minute, God, but I got to solve this, okay? I just sit there and go, okay, misplaced my car keys again. Yeah, okay. Infinite presence that knows where everything in the universe is, knows exactly where it is all located, knows exactly where my car keys or my whatever it is located, and reveals that to me right here and right now. And within seconds, usually, or within a few minutes, I find it. We were just playing with that. Cynthia had misplaced something the other day, and she said, well, I know you're really good with that stuff. Just do your thing, and within 10 seconds after that, you found it, right? We oftentimes don't use the Spirit where we could use the Spirit. We go first to, I got to work this out. We go first to, let me go to a minor deity. MD. Okay. You're catching on, okay. Let me go first to an authority figure somewhere else to work this out, rather than how can I go to God and work this out. So as we clean out the lines, as we shut down these energy leakages, our life starts to flow more freely. Here's what Ernest Holmes has to say about that. He says in his book, Living Without Fear, we must take the science of mind into everyday life. Everyday life. Everyday life. Okay, got that? Okay, one person does. Let me try this again. Everyday life. Do you got that? Yes. Okay, all of it, every detail. You take this principle, this process, this infinite presence into it. And when we find ourselves confronted by discordant conditions, we should never say, oh, what's the use, but rather say, there is something, that's a capital S, something, there is something in me which is greater than this condition, and it can dissolve it. How about if you looked at every discordant situation in your life and looked at it and said, there is something within me that's bigger than you, and it can dissolve that situation right there. And start to mean it and start to be open to it. What would your life look like? Better and better. Thank you, Ruby. We have the privilege and the power to do this. And if we use this ability properly, it will be productive of salutary results. When he says, I always love Ernest's wording, productive of salutary results, it means it's going to create results that are a win-win for everything and everybody. Because that's how Spirit works. That's how the infinite works. It doesn't believe in you win and you lose. Because the you over here that's losing, who is that? Yeah, still you, still God, okay? It's still the same infinite presence. So it doesn't say, well, I'm going to have part of me win and part of me lose. No, it creates win-wins all around. A minister that I know, Reverend Doria Patlin, had cerebral palsy as a child. And his mother healed his cerebral palsy through the use of spiritual mind treatment. And she met with Ernest Holmes. So it was back in he's up there in years, and his mother was up there in years. She met with Dr. Ernest Holmes, and Dr. Ernest Holmes told her that Dory could be healed, but that his mom must first learn to see him as a perfect creature of a perfect God, and not as a poor, crippled child. Got the difference? So the way that we mostly misuse the power is we tend to look at our existing physical conditions, the circumstances, that which stands around us, circumstances, and we recognize them, but we believe in them more than we believe in our power to change them. And the truth is that our circumstances were either created by us in our own thinking and process, or by the collective hypnotism around us, which we said yes to and opened up to allow them to continue to create in our lives. Okay? And that's the circumstances. When we start to say, that's not the truth of me, that's not the truth of God, that's one of my favorite phrases, is if it ain't true of God, it ain't true of me. Okay? So think of that in your life. If it ain't true of God, is God sick? God broke? Poor? Nope. God missing love and lonely? No? Yeah, right. God lacking for ideas, creativity, wisdom, careers? Does God sit there and go, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of unemployed at the moment. Okay? No, God isn't that. God isn't that. And if it's not true of God, then it's not true of me. Now, I may have gotten fooled into believing that it's true of me, and that's uncomfortable. And then it's uncomfortable when I start to recognize that, ooh, I could be shifting that around and changing that. Okay? And the first things that happens when we start to shift it is we do feel uncomfortable, especially if it's something that's been with us for a while. Years ago when I was in a personal growth seminar that taught some of the same principles that we teach, and I think I've talked about this before, I know I've talked about it in class, but one of the things that one of the instructors asked me to do was to stop saying, when people ask me how I'm doing, to stop saying I'm just hanging in there, I'm just getting by. Because that's where I was 30 years ago. Just getting by, just kind of hanging in there. Basically, I realized afterwards what it was I've got this sad story and I want to tell it to you. Will you stop and listen to my sad story? Okay? Sorry, it's really embarrassing to admit. What they asked me to do was say, I'm doing great. I couldn't. Those words could not come out of my mouth. I couldn't say I'm doing great. It was too long of a stretch, okay? You ever have that where it's too far of a stretch for you? Okay? But we agreed that I could say I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Okay? For the first 2 months, when somebody would ask me how I'm doing and I would say I'm doing good, my stomach would go into little knots and I'd almost want to lose my lunch, okay? I felt totally, ugh. It was not me. And if there's one thing I prided myself on, it was being authentic. It was being really honest of who I am. Not recognizing that the who I am that I was trying to be in integrity with wasn't the real who I am. Okay? 6 months after that, somebody walked by me at a client's place that I was walking through and said, "How you doing, David?" And I said, "Great." And I said it wasn't because I was supposed to say it. It was just, I just answered the question and how I was actually feeling in the moment. And then I caught myself. I went, oh my God, and I am doing great. I'm in a new job, which is making me 3 times more money than I was making, is in a whole lot better conditions than I was working in before. I've got a car instead of just a bicycle to get around LA. Bicycle is just as the only transportation around LA is a little challenging, just in case you've ever wondered, especially when you have 2 jobs and they're on the opposite ends of the town at night. Yeah, I did have lights on my bike, yes. I had a girlfriend, which I hadn't had before. Okay? I was doing great. It took me 6 months to move into that space of doing it, and it took getting over the uncomfortableness of who I thought I was and who I used to be and who I was in the habit of being, really, to start to shift that. So when we start to work with this practice, who you are in the habit of being will feel stronger, but it's not the truth of you. It's not the truth of you, and that's the way that you start to remember that. So to use the power, we must do 4 things. First of all, we must know of it. We got to know if there's a power there to use. Most of you know that. You got that to some degree, right? Okay? You wouldn't be sitting in this church probably if you didn't. Secondly, trust it. And that's where we get into trouble sometimes. We don't quite trust it. Well, it'll work sometimes. It'll work on this over here, but it might not work on this over here. Okay? So we have to trust it. We have to lean into that power. Thirdly, we have to use it wisely in the direction we truly want to go. If I'm worrying, what am I doing with my mind? I'm imaging and putting words, thoughts, and feelings to what I don't want. And how do we create? With images, words, thoughts, and feelings, right? So if I'm imaging myself as broke, if I'm imaging myself as out of work, if I'm imaging myself as never having a relationship that I really want, if I'm imaging myself in any way other than what I really want, guess what? I'm inverting the power. I'm using the power, and the power works perfectly and says, oh, that's what you want to create? I can do that. So I like to say the universe always says yes. And every once in a while I have to stop and say, what did I just ask it to say yes to? Because what showed up wasn't what I really wanted. So somewhere within my consciousness, I asked it to say yes to that. And usually, it's somewhere in our unconscious. We don't consciously sit there and go, I want a miserable life. How many people here have consciously said, I want a really miserable life? Yeah, my hand's not up either. Okay? But unconsciously, because of sets of beliefs that come together, we create experiences we don't love. Okay? And then the last thing to do is let go of our blockages. Let go of our blockages. And we begin by looking at the circumstance and telling the circumstance, as popular, there's a wonderful phrase that says, don't tell God how big your problem is, tell your problem how big your God is. Okay? So you look at whatever circumstance is that's causing you disturbance, and you tell it how big your God is and what the truth of it is. Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes says, to learn how to think is to learn how to live. To learn how to think is to learn how to live. Each of us is drawing from life what he thinks into it. Each of us is drawing from life what we think into it. And so we think and become a living embodiment of those thoughts. We become what we think about. You know, remember the phrase, you become what you eat? There's a truth to that, but more than that, we become what we think about.
So you're chocolate?
I'm chocolate. I'm rich and dark and flavorful. Ushers, would you find that person and give him a blessing? Ernest says we don't do this by holding thoughts. We don't hold on to a thought and try and make it happen or force it to happen. We do it by knowing the truth of who we are. All I've got to do is remember, wait a minute, time out. I'm God in form. I'm not going to let this stupid thing get me down. I'm God in form. I can start to tap into the infinite power of the universe and deal with this. Okay? So that's how we work with this. So this week, what I'd like to invite you to do for spiritual practice is two things. Number one, spend some time contemplating the infinite. Spend some time contemplating God, Allah, the Tao, Om Namah Shivaya, whatever it is that is for you. Spend time contemplating that. Just contemplating that. The infinite creates by self-contemplation. We create by contemplating. The New Thought writer Emmett Fox told us that any problem can be solved by thinking of God instead. Because God is all the life, love, joy, power, abundant good that there is in the universe. If I start to focus on that, then what am I focusing on? I'm focusing on what I want instead of what I don't want. Okay? So we spend time contemplating the infinite. That's number one. And then number two, out of that, choose a place to apply the infinite power. So it's not just like a nice, pretty theory. Take some place in your life and work with it. Ernest Holmes says that our teaching is here to be applied to human needs and aspirations. Okay? We've all chosen to suit up and play in this two-dimensional, three-dimensional physical world, right? Okay? Some of us more so and more loudly than others. But we've all chosen to be here and play, okay? So take the spirit which is creating itself as us in this form and choose a place. Where do you want to play with it? It might be something that's not working well in your life and you want to start to have it working well. It might be something that you haven't done in your life that you really want to do and move it into something greater than it already is, okay? So choose. Take a place to apply that infinite presence in your life and create something. Create the mold in your mind. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? Start to get that thought, start to get that image, start to get clear with it. What is it? And then contemplate this until you become the person who is, has, or does this thing. That's our spiritual practice for this week. You willing to take that on? Yes. Contemplating the infinite, taking and applying that infinite to contemplating what it looks like in a particular area of our lives. And stick with it through the parts of your life, the little mind chatter that's going to sit there and go, yeah, it's not going to work. Okay? If you have that, see a practitioner and work your way through it. Because on the other side of that is a whole lot bigger life. I'm going to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes. This is from The Voice Celestial, which was an epic poem that he and his brother Fenwick wrote. There's a dialogue basically between a person called the Wayfarer and the Divine. And so this is the Divine speaking to the Wayfarer. The Wayfarer symbolizes us. O foolish soul, O child of ignorance, who knows so much and knowing does not know. I come to thee as I to Moses came, unstopped his eyes and showed the Holy Land. I'm going to take a diversion from that. Our opening reading was from the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is shown, Krishna shows Arjuna his magnificence, his full godness. And right before that is a little section that Arjuna asks to see this, and Krishna comes back to him and says, you can't see this with your mortal eyes, but I will open up your special eye so that you can see this. It's your inner eye. And it's the same thing with Moses. Moses wants to see God, and God basically says, it'll kill you if you see me. You can't see me with your human eyes. And so opens up a different eye. And it's that eye that we need to look at our life with. It's that inner eye. It's that inner eye. And when we start to look at that inner eye that is connected to the truth of who I am and to the truth of what all this is, then we start to look at it differently, not believing in that out there, but believing in this in here. That's what Jesus meant when he says, I have overcome the world. Okay? Because we have to overcome the world and move into that inner sense. The poem goes on, to know too much is to not know at all. The vessel full, too full, to hold the waters drawn from deeper wells, cannot contain the draughts more newly drawn. For how can wisdom gain from knowledge, if knowledge be that which is untrue? 1,000 falsehoods never make a fact. Turn then from thy half-truths, thy mortal mind, and go with me. Nay, not to distant stars. The way of truth is never out. It is in. So I invite you this week to go in for your inner truth. To go in to that place where you and the divine commune together and spend that time communing. So let's move into prayer. Knowing there is that one infinite. Knowing that there's this infinite love, this infinite power, this infinite grace, this one presence that wants to live fully, completely, and fabulously through and as us. Recognizing that because this one presence is all that there is, that we have to be one of it. There's no place to be outside of the infinite. And so we are God. We are God. We are the life energy of God, individualized. We are the love of God, individualized. We are the light, the joy, the harmony, the abundant good, the vibrant aliveness of the infinite, individualized, uniquely expressing as me, as you. Each of us is one of that here and now. And so I speak my word that we begin to wake up from the slumber. We begin to wake up from the sleep of the hypnosis that we were put under by others in our lives who meant well, but they themselves were working from hypnotism. To start to wake up to that truth of who we truly, truly, really magnificently are, and to be willing to stand in that magnificence, to step into that magnificence. To stand in this power, this glory, this grace of who each of us truly is. And then create from that. Creating into this world, in creating a world that works for all. A world of love, a world of harmony, a world of wholeness. Knowing that each of us and all of us are blessed by this process. And so in gratitude for the good that is expressed through that, I simply release this word into that law, into that process that knows how to unveil this, how to make this happen, how to bring this about in the most beautiful, perfect, and powerful ways possible here and now, and know and trust that it does. And I anchor that in my own consciousness and invite you to join me by saying, and so it is. Blessing.